There you go.
Okay, it says recording. Great.
All right. Well, I'll join you here in a few. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Okay, I'm taking a deep breath. I'm letting it all out. I've had a very frazzled morning.
Yeah.
Brought on totally by my my failure to appreciate that I have a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had to stop by this used bookstore in my neighborhood.
Okay.
The next thing I know, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
I'm rushing to get here. Last week I was late, so
Yeah.
I didn't want that to happen today. But here I am.
Okay.
Good to
Great.
go.
Great. I have a couple of questions before we get started, just for my reference, to see how I'm tracking myself of my experience and the work that we're doing and with the Infinite Conversations. Is I'm at a place that I feel like it's really about establishing a circle, or from the bottom up, down again, so that there's not so many. It's a circular pattern that helps us use the bottom, the gut, come from the feet up to the brain. Then, but the brain sometimes, for whatever reason, I think it's caused by trauma, will cut off, going back down. Just my simple, how I've worked with my trying to join the lower and the upper, part of my experience.
Join the lower and the upper.
Yeah.
In a circular pattern, gut to brain, and then you believe maybe due to trauma, there's a cutoff from going back down.
Right. And so there's a cutoff of going back down. So what I've actually, coming from the place of bottom up, is actually some of the work has been to actually tear down the walls and get more flexible partitions. I was telling Doug last week, I don't know if you watched it, is a lot of it has been about setting boundaries, but understand, what are they made of? How solid are they? How concrete? How is there porousness in them? Like, almost like the difference between a solid brick wall and a Japanese paper partition.
Like a solid brick wall or a paper partition?
Yeah, that spectrum, working with that spectrum. But then one of the things that's came in is in listening to about Gebser is this, I don't know how you would language it, but actually I get actually knowing that the walls, seeing through the walls, that they're transparent. They become transparent because that they're not permanent. They just exist for function.
Okay. Could you repeat that last part? I was writing something down, I missed it.
Okay. From what I've been listening to about Gebser, okay, and his notion of transparency, and I can't pronounce the other word,
Diaphany. Diaphanous?
Yeah, diaphany. And how my understanding is intensities become important to reaching that point where, like Ed put in his thing, is you actually see the glass that you're seeing through, and so it's you're not ignoring that you do. It seems like you're not ignoring that there is something between you and the world, and not taking it for granted.
And intensity, and see through the glass. You're seeing through.
Yeah, there's a skit that was done by somebody of, how glass can be so clear you don't know it's there. And there's this skit of this guy with a cup of coffee walking right through a plain glass because he didn't see it, and just breaking the whole thing.
Yes. This can happen. It's happened to me once or twice. I didn't break the glass, I just gave myself, I got hit in the head a couple of times walking
Yeah.
through a glass door that was locked.
Oh, okay.
That's quite a surprise. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and then I'm going to refer to your previous the previous desired outcome that we were working with last time.
Okay.
And we'll take it from there. We'll do a little modeling, and we can pause whenever we want to.
Okay.
And we'll be waiting for our friend Douglas to rejoin us.
Excellent.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm using your language, open-ended language, open-ended questions about your language. So I'm
Okay.
using your language to re-enter
Okay.
that landscape.
Okay.
No luck here in small town. I'll be present in approximately 30 minutes. Thank you, Doug. Okay. Modern technology, it's amazing. Okay. A circular pattern. Gut to brain, perhaps trauma, cut off from, going back down, join, lower and upper, and bottoms up, and tear down walls, and flexible partitions. What made of? Solid, working solid brick or paper partition, working with the spectrum, and see the glass you're seeing through. And is there a relationship between all of that and I need to feel secure and restructure a sense of agency?
Yes, there is a relationship.
Is there anything else about that relationship?
That it's very dynamic, very dynamic. And when I'm using dynamic, it's on the emphasis of intensity.
And very dynamic and intensity. And when very dynamic and intensity is whereabouts intensity?
It actually moves in different, depending on the state, the situation. It can be in my feet, it can be in my gut, it can be in my chest, my back, and in my heart.
And intensity can be in the feet, in your gut, chest, back, heart. And when intensity can be in feet, gut, chest, back, heart, what happens next?
Two possibilities. One is high anxiety at the experience, with the experience, with the experience. The other possibility is one that I've learned. It's come after the first possibility. The other experience is the skillfulness to embrace, breathe, and work with the intensity and dynamic.
And two possibilities, high anxiety, and second possibility, skillfulness, embrace, work with. And what determines high anxiety? Second possibility. What determines high anxiety from second possibility?
At this time, I'm not sure I can articulate it. There is something, but I feel like it's fuzzy of what that is.
And I'm not sure, you're not sure, and fuzzy. And when fuzzy, whereabouts fuzzy?
Mainly in my fucking head.
Fucking head. And when fuzzy in fucking head, what was head before fucking head?
What was what?
What was head before fucking head?
Oh, the head didn't even exist before fucking head.
And the head did not exist. And when the head did not exist, what happens to fuzzy?
Blue sky.
Ah,
Night sky. Either one.
blue or night sky. And blue sky. And when blue sky how old is blue sky?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
With no head.
It began when I was 3 years old.
Huh. It began when 3 years old. And when it began, 3 years old, is there anything else about 3 years old? Does 3 years old have a size or a shape?
Its shape and size is the shape and size of the first home I became aware of living with my parents and my younger brother.
In the first home I became aware of living with my parents and my brother. And when first home, living with parents and brother, what is 3-year-old wearing?
Oh, diapers, that's all. Nothing but diapers.
And when nothing but diapers, 3 years old, and blue sky.
Mhm.
What does 3-year-old want to have happen?
Actually, 3-year-old doesn't want anything happening. It is happening.
It is happening.
That's the internal giggle of the 3-year-old.
The eternal giggle of the 3-year-old.
Katina, join us.
Hello.
We'll be right with you, Katina. I can hear you. Can you hear us? Okay,
Yes, I
great.
can.
I'm in the middle of something with Michael, and then we'll be starting.
Mhm. Yep.
In the blue sky, and 3-year-old in diapers, and is happening, and high anxiety, or second possibility, skillfulness, embrace. What happens to feel secure? I need to feel secure.
Actually, what's interesting is there's no need. It doesn't even feel like a need. There's no need existing.
Ah, and there's no need to feel secure.
Yeah.
When there's no need, what happens to secure?
I don't know any other way to express it.
And when, and you don't know any other way to express it, is a relationship between and restructuring a sense of agency.
Yes. And that relationship is, wow, I can restructure. Like a child that likes to build things and tear it down. It's that, oh, there's a sense of play of not, of working with form without, and this is critical for me, without an adult telling me what the fuck to do.
Working with a form without an adult telling you what to do, and a sense of play. And when a sense of play, whereabouts is that sense? What kind of sense is that sense when a sense of play?
Feeling into the 3-year-old and that sense of play. It is within and all around.
Within?
But within is the starting point. Within is the starting point, but that within knows no upside.
And within, a starting point. And within knows no outside. Whereabouts within?
The image that comes to mind is a baby Buddha sitting in meditation.
A baby Buddha sitting in meditation.
It could also be, and this is because I'm an adult, it could be baby Jesus just having a fun time.
Baby Jesus having a fun time because you're an adult. Baby Buddha or baby Jesus having a good time and blue sky. And with all of that, what happens to intensity?
It's embraced. It's embraced because it's really life itself.
It's life itself. Is that a good place to pause?
Yes, it is, John. Thank you.
And if you could make a representation in a way that makes sense to you.
Okay.
And maybe we can switch over to Katina.
Okay.
Hi, Katina. Are you outside now? I can't hear you.
Unmute yourself, Katina.
I'm actually gonna go. Yeah, I'm actually going back inside now. But yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I have to log back into work at 1 o'clock.
Okay, so we have 40 minutes approximately.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Okay, we can work with you next whenever you are comfortable and ready to settle in.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm running either way. So.
Yes, Doug said he's finding a parking place and he'll join us soon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he should be on soon. So I want you to relax.
Yeah.
That was a good conversation yesterday. I enjoyed it.
It was awesome, I know.
Yeah.
I didn't want that conversation to stop either.
So I was thinking about the Gidley and that mandala, and there was voice and love and wisdom, and I can't remember the fourth one, but I know Doug will remember.
Yeah.
So I was curious about how we would take that map and move it into a territory, because it's very conceptual. And I think that's the challenge that seemed to be brought up for me. That's what I learned the most, I think, from our encounter yesterday, was how our maps, if they don't have a territory, can actually cause us a lot of confusion. But if we do have a territory, then our maps get more interesting, and we can make better maps.
Right.
That's my theory. That is what I wanted to sort of explore. But I can put that on hold until Doug gets here. And then maybe what would you, if there's something you want to put on our map today that you want to develop?
Well, I know that they use this certain software called Kumu, K-U-M-U, to develop those maps. And I went to the website. You have to sort of like register, and it's fee-based, but you can use it like limited, in a limited sense. But you go there to develop, and they have all types of models and templates of maps, okay? And they're, and they look sort of like the cosmos. They're like little circles that envelop other circles. But like you said, if there's no territory, and that's one of the biggest challenges I've had working with Marco and Caroline on developing a map for the structuring cosmos I see, is because they're all like you said, they're maps, and there's all these circles and connecting to other circles, but where's the substance, like the stuff that all these circles sort of consist in, and that's what makes it a little bit, it does make it confusing. And I like text. I still like text. I remember when Doug showed the map, when we mapped out Gidley's book yesterday, there was also a side screen with the text that referred to the map, and the text actually, reading the text made more sense of it to me. So I think there's always that's really important. But I agree. I think that what I liked about the discussion yesterday, John, was a lot of what Gidley brought up, especially the pedagogy of love and wisdom. As I was saying yesterday, that's not something that just applies to education or to the futurist philosophy. It also applies to everything. It applies to any endeavor, any type of structure you're trying to, or any system that you're trying to work with. So that's why I could appreciate where she was coming from. Was not just applying it to to education, applying it, like I said, in any type of system that you want to develop.
So from what I'm hearing is you're taking this to a meta-systemic level. You're looking at this particular map within larger systems, and you're just saying this can apply to other systems besides
Yes.
pedagogy. Yeah.
Yes, but she said pedagogy of love, pedagogy of wisdom. Love and wisdom. Well, that's philosophy. And I remember when I first started teaching, and they asked me to develop my own pedagogy, what have you. There was a lot of love language, and it's sort of like a mission statement for a teacher. There was a lot of language, love language, and I was criticized for that a lot because I said we need something a little bit more concrete. But I think that that's where it has to start. That's where I was telling Marco when developing Cosmos and IC as a, I don't know, as a system or something. People working together, collaborating. Like, for example, there was this big movement in education on collaboration, in particular between special education and general ed, all right, as a way to promote inclusion. And I thought, okay, so I remember taking the class on collaboration, and there was nothing in there about friendship, okay? Which I think, to me, a collaborative relationship, it'd be nice if we could develop friendships, but all they focus on, they define collaboration as, people from multiple specialities coming together with a common goal.
Right.
Okay, but it never worked because common goal is one thing, but there was a lot of the people, were at each other's throats a lot. The specialists or whatever. There was nothing in there about love or about connecting, about relationships. And I was unfortunate. I was indoctrinated by that, and I made a really big mistake my first year teaching elementary. And I had a teaching assistant, my first teaching assistant, and she was considerably older than me, and she was going through a tough time. In particular, she was having difficulty because the previous teacher who left, she had developed a relationship with this teacher, and they were friends. And then I'm coming in with this, with this professional hat on, with everything that I learned about boundaries and collaboration and all that kind of stuff on a professional level. And we locked horns, this teaching assistant and I, because it was my fault. I had no compassion for what she was going through. I just came in there. I was like, our common goal is the students. That's it. Anything apart from that, let's not bring our personal lives to work. Let's not, and I said something to her that was really bad one day. I said, she said, well, the previous teacher, she and I were, we were friends. And I said to her, well, I'm not here to be your friend. Remember, this is like when I first started teaching. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your colleague. I'm here to work with you. And she said, oh, well, I'm sorry, because I thought you were here to be my friend too, And I thought she was wacko, because I'm thinking, what is with this lady? I mean, she needs to take some mental health time off or something. But I was wrong. I've learned better since then. And she had the right idea. I mean, I should have, and that's the approach I take now. Any vocation or any endeavor is, if there's not some type of cultivating of relationships going on in whatever it is we're trying to build or work on, then I'm not interested. Then I feel like it's not going to work. There's more to it than what do you call it? Credentials and professionalism, and there's more to it than that. I mean, that may be the scaffold, but you need the insulation, and that's, so that's something that.
Can I backtrack a little bit?
Sure. Uh-huh.
And I'm using your language.
Okay.
And I'm asking you clean, open-ended questions about your language.
Right.
And
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Friendship, and pedagogy, love, pedagogy of wisdom, and philosophy, and love language. And when love language, is there anything else about love language?
Yes, there is voice. Okay, voice is very important. That's why I'm very suspicious of all of this emphasis on chatting and voicemailing texting and all that kind of stuff, and sort of we're getting away from connecting with the human voice. You know, there's a lot you can communicate in the human voice, especially as a teacher. Tone, you know, intonation, all of that is so important when you're communicating, you know, on an instructional or otherwise level. And in particular, one of my favorite activities teaching was read alouds, right? When you get a chance to take a picture book and read aloud to the students, oh man, I love that. Because you really get to see how voice and language and all of it, and like you said, one thing you said before, John, about language is engaging as many of the senses as possible, not just voice, not just, you know, auditory in terms of people hearing you, but it's movement, it's facial expression, it's, like I said, volume. And I will tell you that you said love language, it also works on the flip side. Love language can really build up. It has such therapeutic potential. I mean, it's amazing. But it also, from my personal experience, it also has very destructive potential, because I had a mother who used the power of voice in an extremely destructive way, and she still does to this day. And in a sense, it's part of what has motivated me to reverse that process and to use language as an act of love. You know, to use it as a vehicle of love, because I'm so accustomed to having it used as a vehicle of destruction.
And a language as an act of love, and love language, therapy as therapy, language as destructive, boundaries, and movement and senses and facial expression and volume and voice, very important. And voice, very important. Whereabouts is that voice? Does it have a size or a shape?
I think the voice is, I really think, I'm not trying to be esoteric about this, but I think it's a component of a person's soul. It's not just found in the, you know, the voice box or the trachea or whatever the, you know, biological structure is for the voice organs. It's found on, it's part of your whole being. I mean, the voice is a part of the whole body.
Whole being, whole body, and soul. And when whole being, whole body, and soul, whereabouts is that soul? When whole body, whole being, does that soul have a size or a shape?
No, I think that it's unlimited in a sense. I think it's unlimited. It not only, because it can travel, you know. It's not just because, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. When the voice is used as a therapeutic or as a way of building, when it's used as a building or an empowering source, right? There are times when I've been teaching and my voice has actually become larger than my own being, my own body. It's gone because of the way it's used, because of the way it's being expressed. It goes like beyond me, okay? And but also I've seen examples where people have used their voice in a destructive way. And you know, this little 5'4", 5'3" woman, 140-pound little woman, my mother, and she's using her voice in a destructive way. You know, it's almost like I'm dealing with a T-Rex, okay? So, you know, I think that it can take on, it can grow beyond you, but in a way that it can encompass others, or in a way that can be destructive to others. So yeah, it can go beyond you. Your voices, I don't even think that it's limited in the sense that we're finite, you know, but the voice and the word and words, yeah, I think that it can go way beyond us.
Way beyond us.
Yeah.
The voice can go way beyond us. And the voice can travel. And when, and the soul, the whole being. And when, soul, whole being. And larger, what kind of travel is that travel?
Well, it's almost like in a spiritual type of spiritual sense, okay? It's not something that you see. It's like the wind in a sense, okay? You feel it. You feel it. So, you know, I think it, yeah, I think that the travel is like sort of like the way a spirit travels.
And in like a wind,
Mhm.
and you can feel it.
Right.
Whereabouts feel it?
You feel it in, I think a lot of times it goes directly to the soul. Like if my voice is emanating from my soul, okay, it travels like wind, just like breath, expressive language, or exhaling. It can go and it can deposit itself in the soul of another.
And breath and exhaling?
Mhm. Right.
And then what happens next? When breath and exhaling.
Then that's when your voice travels. And depending on who you're communicating with, it can deposit itself into the soul of whomever you're communicating with.
And deposits itself into the soul.
Right.
Whoever you're communicating with.
Right.
And when voice and breath travels to the soul of whomever you're communicating with,
Mhm.
is there a relationship between that and language as an act of love?
Yes, because I think that that's one of the ways that love is expressed. I mean, you know, love is felt in between souls. And so that's the way language and voice can be a vehicle of love.
And when language as a vehicle of love, and like the wind, and feel it, and the breath, exhale, and the voice travels and communicates to the soul.
Right.
And with all of that, and voice is very important. And how old could that be?
Can you repeat that question?
How old could that voice be?
I don't think there's an age you can associate with it. You can get that from, you can be impacted by the voice of a baby crying, or a baby trying to communicate. Even the little babble that a baby like expresses can have an impact on your soul. You know, so I don't think there's an age that you can really.
And it doesn't have an age, and even a baby babbles, can communicate soul.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
when that voice, that's very important, has no age and can, even a baby babble, where does that voice come from?
I think because it operates in such a spiritual manner, I think it comes from the spirit.
And is that a good place to pause?
Yeah. That was great. That was great, John.
I'm wondering if you have a pencil and paper, or even on a napkin, you could make a representation?
Of what?
Could you make a representation in a way that makes
Okay, of what?
drawing a sketch of the act of love, the whole soul, the wind,
Okay.
like the wind, and then there's that dinosaur. That
No.
another question I would ask later on is when that destructive was, what would you like to have happen? Because I know that the voice model for us comes from a love in the soul. I don't want to confuse you.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think instead of dinosaur, I should have said fire breathing dragon. And maybe what I would like to happen is I would like to morph into a knight with their sword. A spiritual sword in some way with armor to keep myself from being prevent myself from being incinerated. Yeah.
Put that on your map.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to switch to Doug, and then we'll be right back to you. Okay, thank you. Doug, welcome. Douglas, do you have your, yeah.
Hey, hello.
So you got your car parked?
Well, it was much more than just parking a car.
Oh, yeah?
Car parked.
Oh, you had your lunch. You had your lunch, right?
No, I haven't had a lunch, but I had enough snack to hold me over for the next hour or so.
Okie doke. So we worked with Michael, and we just worked with Katina. And I would like to invite you, since your presentation yesterday was so interesting and very stimulating. I was talking earlier about the pie chart, Gidley's Mandela, and we were working with the pedagogy of life, love, wisdom, voice, and we were just exploring that with Katina. And I'm just curious, this is sort of an open frame with you, Doug. I don't know what you want to work on or what you're interested in exploring, but I'm just curious about that map and how we can, the concepts, how can we leap into the territory and find a relationship with the territory. And then we could probably, our concepts would be much richer having had that experience. So that's my logic, and why I believe these clean language questions really facilitate that. So is that something we could do in the time that we have together today?
Yes.
So I'll ask you a few clean questions, and anything you want to add, I'm open. If there's something else you want to bring up.
Well, in order to screen share, at least I would have to log in on my laptop, so I might attempt that if we see fit. So if you would like to see that diagram right now, maybe for Michael's sake as well.
Actually, why don't we go back? Why don't we do that at the end of our call if we can?
Okay, yeah, if we have time for that.
I could just develop with you when we review life, love, wisdom, voice. Which one of those are you most drawn to?
That's a good question. I know for myself, the idea of wisdom is tied with mentorship with my elders. I see my child as an elder in a lot of ways. I'm learning from him. I see everyone here as an elder. In the sense that I respect all of you, I have there's a sense of reverence for what's coming out, but also we mentioned the voice. The voice. I'm not clear what Gidley means by the voice just yet, but there is the multiple voices, and we are all equal voices, in my opinion, and that's what I mean by my child is an elder. And of course, I'm teaching him perhaps 100-fold times more than what he's potentially teaching me, just because there's so much to absorb when you're younger. But I once heard at age 30, our personalities stop developing from some psychologist I was reading. I had a bachelor's in psychology, and I've made it a life mission, kind of a background goal that I'm well past 30 now, but I feel like I've changed more in the past 2 years, even the past few weeks. It's a constant change, and that's a good thing. There's forward motion, of course. There's 2 steps back and all that type of stuff, but here we are.
Okay.
So
I'm going to ask a few clean questions. And wisdom and mentorship and your child as elder, and a reverence and voice and multiple voices and reverence. And when reverence, is there anything else about reverence?
reference
Reverence.
is to be, I feel it's natural, but it is to be taught, and it is to be learned, or especially relearned in the environments we currently live in. Or there needs to be a shutting off of the current environment in order to seek out reference.
And it needs to shut out the larger environment in order to seek out reverence, and taught and learned and natural. And whereabouts is that reverence with natural and taught and learned? Does it have a size or shape?
It is a deep love right now. I'm about to start weeping just thinking about it, because it is tied in with the spiritual, with reverence for the world around me, and perhaps the weeping is because I am not always in tune with it.
And weeping, and not always in tune with it, and a reverence for the world, and a deep love. And when a deep love, whereabouts deep love?
And yeah, I failed to mention it is within the body, within the heart space. It's a personal space I'm exploring. I mentioned I tend to neglect the torso area.
And a personal heart space and deep love. And when deep love and personal heart space, whereabouts in heart space?
It is internal. It's not there's a depth to it, but I feel directly right in the central realm.
And a depth to it, and in the central realm. And personal heart space. And when very deep love, internal and depth and personal. Is there anything else about personal?
Yeah, this is coming from my heart. This is not any other perspective. So it is my heart's voice, if you want to say that. Perhaps it's coming from a divine source. Right now I'm sensing it as just of my own creation, or something I've been cultivating.
And when your heart's voice, something you have been cultivating, and weeping, is there a relationship between your heart's voice and weeping?
weeping. So I'm drawn to something Michael referenced with kind of maybe it was the mind and the fucking mind, or I guess my
Fucking head. That's fucking head.
That's right. But I think he went further to explain there's kind of the unconscious processing and then the actual in control processing. I don't have necessarily an addiction to marijuana, but it comes my way and I don't resist it. It's been 6 months since I had access, and just recently I had access, and normally I would beat myself up over my failure to stick with the goals or personal knowledge that I've set forth for myself. So in a way, the weeping is for that lost soul in myself that continually wants to grasp, and our explorations with the spiritual, with Aurobindo and here, have made me realize this. I'm consciously aware that I'm doing this act of smoking, and in a way, it's an experiment with my past self and my present self. And I am out of this specific drug, so I don't expect to see it for quite a while. And my goal is to, when it comes my way, I think I'm finished with it. I've had my time with this old friend, and I need to remain finished with it. For it has created some cloudy weather.
And it's created some cloudy weather and an old friend, and you're out of the drug, and an experiment of past self, present self. And when an experiment with past self, present self, is there anything else about that experiment?
It's sort of a lesson, and my greater self knows it's there and it's waiting patiently, constantly. It's not just this cloudy occasion. There's constant distraction in this Doug world of mine. So.
And a Doug world and a greater self waiting patiently. And when a greater self waiting patiently, whereabouts is that greater self? Does that greater self have a size or a shape?
Well, thanks to Michael again. I can't get the image out of my head of a baby Buddha residing within it's in my mind right now, but then it's something that will be maturing soon.
And the baby Buddha in your mind, maturing soon. And when a baby Buddha in your mind, maturing soon, what happens to heart space, personal?
So the heart space is all over now. It can be within the mind, and soon, as I know I do, kind of unconsciously, just within my own being, I do have a strong heart. I've just never recognized it. So once I'm consciously aware of that, the love will be able to be spread without fear of the unknown, of what others might think.
And the love can spread without fear of what others might think. And when love can spread, what happens to wisdom? And a child as an elder?
guess we're all maturing here. So yeah, I think that's all I need to say there. There's just a constant flow of that love
the constant
into the creativity and the complexity of the wisdom.
Constant flow. Thank you. And is that a good place to pause?
I like that, yes.
And if you would be so kind as to make a representation of that in a way that makes sense to you. And I'm going to bring back Michael. Katina, are you still with us? I know you have to leave. Maybe she had to leave already. I lost track of time, but maybe she'll come back. Or if she doesn't, we'll start next time with her. Michael.
John, she said she'd come back. She wrote a note. She had to sign into work. And
Okay. See, this is my challenge as a modeler, because when I enter someone's landscape, I don't want to leave.
I noticed that about you, John. I noticed about you. You're like a ever-present tourist.
So, Michael, can you raise it up a little bit? That's it. A little bit higher, about an inch higher. Great, I can see the whole thing now. And what's going on there?
Oh yeah, the baby Buddha is in the center. These little orbs are my mother is the one closest, my father over here and my brother over here. This is the space that's existing, which there's earth with flowers, and there's a little stump because of my last name, and that used to be a little logo my dad used for us. But if you notice, out of the stump is coming new growth. And there's also the sky is divided into nighttime and daylight. And if you notice in the baby Buddha that in the belly is the color red, for me, that's the vitality of life that's incomprehensible. Let's see. Well, and the baby is sitting in a lotus position, but instead of its arms on its lap, it's got its arms wide open.
And arms wide open, and in a lotus, the baby Buddha, and the vitality, incomprehensible. And sky, night and day, and earth, and parents and brother, and stump, and new growth.
Yeah, coming out of it. Yeah, there's new growth coming out of the stump, where, a big part of it has been cut off.
And what happens with all of that to a sense of agency?
There's a feeling image of the shell of a seed breaking open for new emergent life.
A shell of a seed breaking open to new emergent life.
Yeah, but it's buried in the darkness.
But it's buried in the darkness. And when a shell of the sea and buried in darkness, what does that shell in the sea, buried in the darkness, want to have happen?
Oh, it's just extending tentacles. Tentacles. reaching out to sense where is the nourishment of new life.
And tentacles, and reaching out to where nourishment and new life. And could we pause there? Is that a good pause? And could you, if you would like to, add that to your map? The shell?
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you.
And while you're updating your map, your representation, in a way that makes sense to you, I'm going to switch over to Katina. Is Katina back yet? I guess not. Okay. Then why don't we go with Doug? Or Doug, are you ready to show your map?
Yeah, I'm ready. All right. So
Oh, wow.
the artistic quality didn't quite represent what I had desired. It's a little bit more sloppy than the clarity that I was sensing.
Oh, I see it. I like it.
The drawing started with the head. This is the Buddha, baby Buddha dude. This is the heart space. So the rest of the body is down there. I drew this central dot. And as I drew the dot, I thought of the connections with individuals. That's always a crucial thing for me, is the connection. So there are lines coming from the heart into their space. And also so it's a spiraling into and then out of their space back into mine. And that's when this darker circle expanded here. And this was before Michael mentioned his stump logo for his family, but I see that as almost like a tree stump there, the aging. So with age, the heart grows. And the mouth and the eyes came last, but I felt the joy within this. That's something that came through.
And the mouth and the eyes came last, and felt joy, and heart space, and a central point, and connection to others, and a spiraling into and out of their space, and the baby, Buddha baby dude in the head. And with all of that, what happens to wisdom?
So this guy right here is my new buddy, and I feel like I will grow in wisdom with him. Might even carry this drawing or do another drawing. Maybe find a little baby Buddha to hang out with me. So the wisdom grows when I'm aware of that this guy.
And a new buddy, and the baby wisdom, and a new map. You can add this to your new representation.
Right.
And Katina, perfect timing. Would you, if you could, I'm going to switch to Katina now and update whatever she shares with us, and then we can maybe do a wrap up. I know you have to go soon, Katina. Are you okay?
Yeah. I can show you the.
I'm thinking about another 10 to 15 minutes. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Then we could do an open frame around the Gidley map, because I would like to do an open frame about that particular map and what we may have learned about that. So, and Doug, if you could sort of, maybe in the last 10 minutes, we could do that. So, go back to the drawing board here. Voice, and very important. Do you have a map or a representation of that you could share with us, Katina?
Yeah, I drew the power of voice, right? But unfortunately, I focused on the destructive aspect of voice, because that was just the most vivid to me, and that's what I've had the most experience with.
Can you show it to us? Can you show us this? If that's not a good place to show it, you don't have to, but I'd love to. All right. Okay, this is the dragon, right?
Yeah. You see, and then that's like me. Wait, that's me down here with the little tiny with the
Yeah, I see. It's the armor.
because right. Even though because I'm also no match for it. What I normally go do when I encounter these voices, I go like into my closet and cry. but But I've learned, you know, through therapy and everything, other strategies for handling this type of voice, so that it doesn't embed itself in my soul, like it used to do.
And when it doesn't embed itself in your soul, like it used to do,
Uh-huh.
what happens to the power of?
Oh, but it's still powerful. The power is still there. It's just okay. All right, this is the conundrum for me because you notice with the shield, you know, you use it to defend, right? What happens is when we get back to the metaphor, you know, of my mom, when I put that shield up, to prevent the power of the voice from embedding itself in my soul, what ends up happening is that the shield reflects it back to her. So what happens is it ends up causing her destruction, sort of like, you know, like a boomerang effect. Wait, no, yeah, it bounces back to her, sort of. And it manifests in ways like I see her getting physically sick sometimes, even though she won't admit or associate her bouts of illness with the coincidence that they just happen to surface after she's used her voice in a destructive way. And so that's what ends up happening. And I hate that. I hate because I don't want her to. That's what I hate about it is when that language and that voice, that destructive voice, right? I've learned how to master in a way of mastery and spiritual assistance power to not let it embed itself in my soul. But then I start to see that it has to go somewhere, so it ends up going back to the source and causing destruction there, and I don't like that either. And
the physical, the shield up to prevent the destructive voice, and reflects back, and a boomerang, and spiritual assistance.
Spiritual assistance.
And to prevent the power of the destructive voice from getting embedded in your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of that, what happens to conundrum when you don't want it to go back?
Well, it's like, well, that's where, like you said, what I said, where the conundrum comes in. What will happen is then it has to go someplace. It can't just like, you know, be sort of like a suspended animation. So what will happen is because see the problem, the reason why it goes back is because when I put up that armor, that shield, to not allow it to embed itself in my soul, what it looks like behaviorally is it looks like I'm being aloof. But no, I'm just not letting it affect me. And that's very offensive to the dragon. You know, when the dragon sees that its fire is not effective, that's where, you know, she either will blow a more powerful flame, or it will sort of go back to her. And so what I'll do, because I don't like her to hurt, is I will maybe allow it. I'll put my shield down, and I'll put my shield down, and what I'll do, and this is so stupid, I will take some matches, light a little match. This is a metaphor, and hold a little flame up at her, like, back to you. even though it's no match. But so what I'm saying is I'll retaliate by saying something like something hurtful but truthful. Okay, like I'll say something like, make her aware of what she's doing, and saying that why are you speaking to me like this? I could never speak to you this way, or I don't understand what this conflict is about, or I'll say something, or I'll say something like, the worst I'll say is, remember, this isn't hurting me. What you're saying right now is not hurting me, because your words have lost any credibility to me. So, which hurts her, I guess, even though she won't show it. So that's what ends up happening. I'll retaliate.
And when retaliate, hurtful but truthful, and make her aware, and light a match, and aloof, and she, dragon, fire, not effective. What does dragon and fire is not effective want to have happen?
She wants to be able to come and get a broom and a dustpan and sweep up my ashes off of the floor and put them in like a jar or something, on a shelf or on the nightstand in her bedroom, so she can sort of have me there under her control.
And when she wants to sweep up your ashes and put them in a jar and have control, what does aloof, light match, retaliate, hurtful but truthful want to have happen?
Well, what happens when when I use my armor is I pull my shoulders back, stick my chest out, put my chin up, do an about face, whistle, sing.
And whistle and sing and do an about face,
Mm-hmm.
whistle and sing and do an about face. What happens to love language?
I think at that point, what I'll do is I'll take that love language voice and speak it to myself.
And take that love language voice and speak that to yourself. And can that happen?
It does happen. It has to. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I'd be in a padded room in a straitjacket.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And I think if we could go another 10 or 15 minutes, I know we all have a busy day with this work day. So, well, what would you guys like to have happen in the next 10 minutes? If we were to look at that flow chart, if you have it available for us, Doug, we could all look at it together, and then we could contemplate that mandala that Gidley presented to us and what we've learned from, our exploration here today. I'm open to any kind of feedback.
All right, well, I'll share that now, and at least I hope you share it then. See what happens.
Okay, I see it.
Okay, and I know Katina was interested in what was in the sidelines. Let's see if I can duplicate what's here.
So I don't think, Michael, you weren't at the presentation yesterday, but this was the mandala that Doug presented. And we were looking at love, the pedagogy of life, love, wisdom, and voice, which is in the middle circle.
Yeah.
And these are all connected to the circle outside of that center circle.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested, I explored voice yesterday. I was curious about voice. I I believe Katina worked with voice today, and Doug worked with wisdom. And in the future, you could join us, Michael. But today we worked with your desired outcome for security, feeling secure, and restructuring a sense of agency, which is we followed up from last time.
Right.
So we have all these different maps that we've evolved that comes out of our experience. So I'm just wondering where you guys would like to go with this.
Yeah, I don't mind reading what's on the sidelines here, but this is kind of her very core summary of part 3, which introduces the life, love, wisdom, and voice. So she's identifying pedagogical love as the evolutionary force, life as sustaining force, wisdom as a creative force, and the voice as empowering. So that might give a little more clarity to what it's about. And on this diagram here, each one has 3 of the qualities. So here we are with love. So there's higher purpose, dialogical reasoning, and integration.
Integration. Could you read integration? Our world of specialization and fragmentation requires synthesis. Could you read that? I can't see it.
Yeah, requires the ability to integrate, synthesize, and take a systems approach. Academia is shifting from disciplinary to transdisciplinary approaches.
Okay, this is my suggestion. I think this is what we did today. We're working with the a transdisciplinary approach. And we're also summatizing, and we're using different modalities, different senses. And I believe it with concepts, a conceptual space, and a somatic space. And we're using metaphor. And we've also generated some narratives. So this is what I'm learning as I try to take this map and apply and find applications for it. I remember very poignantly Ken Wilber, one of the transpersonal theorists who a lot of us have studied. I think he had a group of people that he was talking to, and he said, you know, we have to find some applications for this theory because we don't have any. This was after some of the integral studies really flopped at the university level. And I believe this is very poignant that he said this because I think it was an acknowledgement in a way that integral theory had a lot of maps about maps, but there was no territory that they could be applied to. So I wanted to bypass that conundrum and start looking at other integral theorists and what they were offering. And I believe we looked at Sri Aurobindo, and we looked at Ridley's paper, and looking at Gebser. And there are other theorists too who are out there, you know, hypothesizing, predicting that there's a new wave, a new kind of intelligence that wants to happen on this planet so that we can have a planetary future that's going to be sustainable. So I'm just, I had big question marks about that. How are we going to do this? And so to me, this is what I learned, is that we can do this kind of modeling process, self-modeling, taking these concepts and turning them into a perceptual space, moving them into a perceptual space, then returning them, as we're doing now, to a conceptual space.
Right.
So
right.
we need the map, we need a map and a territory. So
right.
We've been exploring the territory. Now let's go back and look at the map and see if our exploration of the territory has enriched this map at all.
Right.
This is the challenge. I think we're all, whatever map you're using and whatever system you're using, we're going to need more than one map, but we also need to recognize this map works here, this map doesn't work. We need another map. So here we are making up new maps.
Right.
I think what Ed said yesterday, was it Ed or was it Mark? Well, someone said yesterday, it doesn't matter, that we need to start with, and I think she makes an attempt to do this, coming up with and promoting a new motivation for education, okay? Not only for teachers, but especially for students. Like, we need to change the language we use in promoting education. It's not as a means, okay? It's an end in and of itself. It's not a tool to acquire something, okay? And also what came out yesterday was start looking at education. Yeah, we have content but all the content, and when we develop curriculum, we have to look at the content as a means for, like Marco said yesterday, Marco M, not inducing information or inducting, but educing, he said, bringing as a tool for a child's self-discovery. The content here is a foundation for your process of self-discovery, and focusing on that. I used to say, I think every child should have an IEP, not just children in special education. But yeah, I think a whole promoting, I've been doing that, but to get it out there, even college professors can do that with their students. It's really funny when you question college students on why they chose a particular major. How do you choose your major? What do you want to study? Why do you want to study that? And start looking at education as something that should just be pursued, because education is free up until the age of 17, 18. And I just think teachers have such a powerful, powerful influence on students. And I don't take that power for granted. I just pray every day I went to school, because I wanted to make sure that power was being used responsibly and as a source of empowerment, but changing the motivation. You're not getting an education just to get a job. Okay, you're getting education to to establish a way of life. Like what Douglas said the other day, education is a part of is not something that he separates from. It's not a separate entity. He incorporates it in the very communication that goes on, in the household. And so, so that's where I think that's where it needs to start. Is motivation for education needs to be totally different. It's not based on some egocentric desire to make a certain salary or this or that.
And motivation establish a way of life rather than just go out and get another job.
Right.
And
I think it's possible within our current environment, even within the complex, it is possible to kind of sneak in there and actually educate, as we're talking about now. But the system doesn't allow for that. So just as one of us can recycle all the plastic we want as an individual, or not purchase certain goods because we know it comes from a long line of blood, sweat, and tears or whatever, the same thing can be done with education, but on an individual level, we're so small. So it feels good to a certain extent till you realize, well, there's billions of other people that need this, and we're on the global scale now. And so there needs to be that change. And the phrase is, we are the change, but how? And we are demonstrating that now, but we need everyone to articulate that. We need more groups like us to spread the news, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, Michael?
I agree. We do need more groups like us. We're doing okay. Yes, Michael, you have your hand raised. Thanks.
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing. I think as far as my path on this is, I've determined, kind of taking a riff off of even Douglas, my phrase would be secret agent, not undercover agent. And then the secret agency part is the fact that I have, I have to learn, like, what, I forget the individual, but he was saying you have to work within, around, and outside the system. We have systems, and a lot of them are fucked up, but that doesn't mean we have to be careful that we don't overreact it. It's a matter of just tearing down and starting over. Sometimes it's about remodeling, restructuring, and I go to the point of what Katina is saying is I do think we need to look at our motivation for education. And I know as a parent, which is like a teacher role, and I've been a student and had parents and other teachers, and both, let's say, teachers, adults, I've had the fortune of having enough modelers to give me contrast to show that they modeled, this is what education is about. It's not just about a job, like she was saying. It's about a way of life. It's about how you relate to your, especially the way it was taught to me was how you relate to your own mind. But since then, I realized we got to deal with the assumed duality between our mind and body. Just a side note, and looking at that map. So I have to digress just a minute. When I was 26, I hitchhiked across country by myself, being informed by Chaucer's tales. I took a map with me, okay? But because of where I was at in my education, especially college, I already had run across somebody that taught me the map is not the territory, but you need a good map. And I hitched across the country with a map, and I think that it's come to plant seed in me that that's how I work. I ask about the image of the seed. Okay, well, like the jellyfish, the tentacles are pushing out in the earth, and there's friction. There's friction. And when I looked at that model that you were saying, it's like all those are like a jellyfish reaching to different aspects of our whole self, which I want to be clear, our whole self includes the environment we live in. Because I think that's the motivation we're lacking too, is not really clearing from a Buddhist point of view. We may appear separate, but yet if you look at it, no, we're not separate. Our separateness is contingent on how well we're aware of what's inside of us and what's outside of us. And that's that to me is the restructuring, which is a source of creativity of my own agency. From a baby Buddha into a screaming adolescent to a hormone young adult to a parent, and now a 64-year-old man that's just knows that I'm just going to try to relax into the next few years, because what's on the other side, I just want to take with me, if there is such a thing. I'm ready. Give it to me. I'm ready for it.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all. I just want to add something in the brief time we have left. I wanted to, yesterday I was exploring this idea that we can detect patterns in ourselves, and we've all been doing that today. And we can represent that in a way that makes sense to us, and we can share that, and it can make sense to others. And when we detect these patterns, and there are more people who can detect their own patterns, then we can then detect patterns in others. And I'm using my imagination here. What would happen next? I would theorize here that we can increase order in our abstractions.
Yeah.
It's not a hit or miss or flying by the seat of their pants or all over the place, but we can create coherent groups.
Right.
Because we can create ordered abstractions. Mm-hmm. And so it's not about shit hitting the fan all the time.
No, No, it's not. No,
We
it's
can do
not.
better than this, people. No, we can. And I think this is a demonstration of our little gathering here, that we are representatives of a larger, of all the communities that we're members of. And I believe that, you know, often we feel in our culture, especially, we're so individualistic that we tend to divorce the public and the private and think, if I have a problem, it's my fault. I have to solve it. I'm all alone. And, you know, and I think we're beginning to wake up that this is a pattern that's culturally established, and we can change it. We can motivate ourselves differently, and we can stop turning education into making more bucks, but turn it into a way of life. And I believe we can be open to detecting more patterns in each other. And I can't remember who said this, but I thought it was so insightful that every time you detect a pattern, the cosmos changes. So it can start small, but it ripples out. And I believe we're all aware of the complexity theory and the butterfly effect, and how something very small, a change in something very small, can have macro effects, especially when we're living in this world of technology the way it is. And I'm hoping we can. A bigger question I have is about agency, and how this is sort of my research project. How can we restructure our sense of agency when the community is physically absent? As increasingly that's the case for most of us. Like here we are, you know, we're communicating through technology, but we're physically absent from one another.
Yes,
I'm not seeing you or hearing your voice. I'm seeing a screen with an image, an abstraction, and hearing an abstract voice. That would be very different if I were in the same room with you and I could reach over and touch you or share the atmosphere that was around us. And I think, how can we make this physical absence a benefit rather than a liability? Because I think we've all been recognizing how our public discourse has been suffering enormously, I think, by bad use of this technology.
well,
So
John, that's a very good point, and there's 100% I agree with a lot about that. But if you read in, especially speaking into the air of that guy that did the cloud, he makes an important thing without dismissing what you're saying, because with the age of telegraph, we created a disembodied way of communicating.
Right.
And it's interesting that it ties into spirit, because spirit is usually conceived as without a body, you know? So one of the things that I at least accept as a working hypothesis is that there, from his point of view, in terms of communication and what we're trying to establish here, is that there's a kind of friction. Even when you're in the same space as somebody, when you're communicating, you're not on the same page. So you're kind of disembodied, even when you're physically. Sometimes I feel more embodied listening to your voices and seeing your face. I get that it comes through a screen, but sometimes maybe it's just the way I'm open to receiving it. Like maybe that's what you're indicating, and that's what we need to get better at, just accepting that limitation. But the flip side of that limitation is the same kind of activity can happen when you're in the presence of somebody. So I don't want to dismiss what you're saying about being in the physical presence, but there's still shortcomings because of the way our brain and our abstractions will get in the way.
That's right. And just because we're in the same real space with each other doesn't mean we're going to be coherent at all.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm pointing to, John. That's what I'm trying to point to, is maybe this technology can be used to actually make more clear how that happens in physical space. And so we own our abstractions and the way we're attaching judgments to certain patterns that we see in the person across us. I know I'm constantly, this medium has helped me take it to the street that of not, I'll have a certain trigger, but now I have an awareness where the trigger is not it's like I have my finger on the trigger. I know I've been triggered, but I'm not pulling it. I'm not reacting, because some people do trigger me just because I don't like them. I just don't like them, you know? I don't like the way they're behaving. Does that make sense?
Good. Makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
Is there any final thoughts from Katina? I think Katina may have had to leave. Maybe she's, oh, there she is. Okay.
I'm still here, and yeah, I totally agree with. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I totally agree with what Michael was saying. Like, if I See Your Cosmos didn't have this Zoom cafe, is Zoom interaction, associated with it, I probably would have, like, I probably wouldn't be using it. And one of the, and I that's, and one of the reasons I like to come to these cafes is because I don't feel comfortable just communicating, two-dimensionally, or just, chatting back and forth, threads and replies and all that. I mean, that's fine with words, but like Michael was saying, there's something that I think that my communication skills have developed a bit just from participating in this Zoom cafe model, and I think that that's important. I think it's, and also it's very different from, I've been totally turned off to the whole Instagram, YouTube, what I've seen there, to the point where I'm just like, whenever with YouTubes and Instagram, and I'm just like, oh, get away. Because even though they use this type of model for communication, it's been so abused, to the point where it no longer has any, to me, it has absolutely no social application or benefit whatsoever. If anything, it does an injustice to socializing. And another thing, one more thing is that I have difficulty communicating in the presence of people, because also, like Michael was saying, sometimes I get distracted by, by their behavior, or by it's just simply if I don't like the person, and a lot of, you said, John, one time that it's really hard to find. I don't care where you live, because I have a friend who lives in New York who claims that, well, if you get out of that, that slow southern town that you live in, and move to, like, the north of New York, you can find those types of people that you want to, or an environment, so, but I'm finding it. So I thought, okay, well, maybe, but it's really hard to find these kinds of conversations, or places to have these conversations, because when I try to initiate these types of conversations with people, they think I'm a weirdo, or that I'm crazy, or that whatever. So I have to keep a lot of this stuff to myself, like a lot of it. And it's so great and that's why the Zoom cafe thing, the interaction, is so crucial to me, because if you all were just black words on a white screen, with screen names, then yeah, I'd still be able to appreciate you, and but the depth of love and connection that I have for you wouldn't really be there, because there's always the possibility that you're not real. So I would have to sort of guard however I start, my development of feelings for you guys, but so this is great to have this, because it's like, because I know that you're real, and it makes me not feel as alone, I guess, as I have felt, in the past. So yeah. It's just like, because I consider you all friends,
Yeah. Just to add a note on what I just said, he also was trying to make clear, part of it is, how do we deal with difference? And that difference is establish how we deal with it, with our need for safety. and safe enough, like John says. And that's what I guess in a semantic sense, I've developed the skill. Well, how safe can I be with this person without feeling afraid or imprisoned by the need of safety? I have a need of safety that is totally legitimate and intelligent, but I've had to untrain myself from different life traumas that have made me detached from how to work with that need for safety. It's legitimate, but now I have a better compass of where that need, how that need is related to, if that makes sense. And I agree with you, Katina. I feel extremely safe in this with all four of us, and on the platform that Marco has created. Because I think it just has established and helped me work with that need. That when I go out on the street, when I leave from here, it's actually helped hone my skill. Like one of the practices I do when I'm listening is I will mute myself, because sometimes I know I have a quick impulse to react to what somebody says, good or bad. And no, I need to mute myself so that I can keep hearing them. And that's just a little technique that I think I've taken to the street when I'm listening to somebody that's right across me in physical space. So I think that there's a lot of good coming from it, but I agree with John. This is it's like learning to read. It's like learning to read.
Yes, radically so. And I've always wanted to, I don't work in academia, and if you're in academia and you want to do a qualitative research project, you already have a lot of guinea pigs out there. You just recruit students, pay them $1 an hour, and then you have your research project and you can write it up and it can be evaluated. But if you're not in academia, how do you make these kind of events happen? And even I live in a huge, New York City is a gigantic place with millions of people running around. Recruiting people for a project, it's labor intensive, and you have to have a lot of money. It's just bottom line. That's what you get if you go to school of NYU or go over to the New School of Social Research. Those cost thousands of dollars a year. And I believe you mentioned, Doug, that we're doing post-formal education right here. So we're just taking we're taking the power back from these monolithic educational systems that don't care about us. They're working for the Pentagon, or they're working for the US government, and I'm just wanting to keep this high quality discipline flow continuing so that we can, create projects, collaborative research projects that don't have to have a factory model stamp on it. So, and all of you are teaching me how to do this better. So thank you.
John, you're an excellent secret agent teacher.
I have to look up that show, Secret.
Yeah, it was a great show in our era that we grew up with. Secret agent, man.
Do you have any final thoughts, Doug, you want to share?
No, I liked your question. I tried to write it down, but so I'm going to be reflecting. I'm constantly reflecting on it, and like Katina and Michael said, I've mentioned multiple times how this way of education has really helped me from being just a shell of a guy to attempting to articulate. But you said, how can we reconstruct agency when community is absent? So perhaps we can start out next time. Say that again, it kind of cut off, I didn't hear you.
When community is physically absent. Right. We're here, but we're not physically here.
Yeah,
that's the conundrum for me.
Yeah, right.
And I have a lot of theories on that I've kind of half developed, but I'd like to really reflect on it maybe the next week, and we can try to come back.
That sounds like a good idea,
Wednesday,
Doug.
at least as a starting point.
Yeah, because I think it's a core. I think John has brought up a really core is this notion of agency and how important it is, And we've been influenced through society of defining what that is. And I like it. I like where it's sending us is maybe we can take some of what we've been told about our agency, but then it's just like what I learned about my parents. I took the good and bad. I put them on trial, and I still love them, but there's some shit I had to just say, no, I'm not going to accept your shit about how to define my, you know, my sense of agency. And part of that, even that idea came from my very father. But when I pushed back on him with that idea, he didn't like it.
Right. I think that's almost universal.
Yeah, right.
Fathers don't like that.
It's part of the cycle of education, maybe. You know,
I know it. Gertrude Stein said something in one of her books. She told us an anecdote. She said a son grabbed his father and was dragging his father through the woods to beat him up. and the father said, "Not past that tree." And the son said, "What do you mean not past that tree?" And the father said, "Because when I beat up my father, we didn't go past that tree." So I would really invite us all to let's think about this next session, and maybe if we could use the forum to, it would be great if you could upload your maps, and then we could make comments on our own maps and where this process is leading us, what happens next, and put down any theories you have, any reflections, any dreams that come up, and definitely, use these maps. These are communications to our community beyond our circle, that I want to make a contribution to, everybody else's development. Those who can't join us can still benefit from our exploration. So I think that's another wonderful thing about our technology, that we can record these and that we can use the forum to articulate both. We can write and we can speak. I think these are, we learn how to write better. When the better we speak, the better we're going to write. That's my theory. And so thank you all very much. I think we're on the hour just about. I feel very complete, unless anyone else has anything they want to contribute.
Thank you, everyone.
Same time next week then?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Doug. And are you posting this and the other one, right, from yesterday? That's coming up today?
I don't have access. It was on Marco's side of recording things, so
I know he
did put up a temporary video, so maybe you can access that. But it's at the very top. It's not a picture frame of our faces or your face.
No problem.
But
I have how
available.
I am. I like to study these, so I'm looking forward.
Tomorrow, I will do my best to get it up as soon as I can. It's the beginning of the month, which means a full day of work for me. So I should be, it's simply just click a button and let it load and then process it. But I might not have a decent summary, but I'll at least upload it tomorrow.
Someday I'm going to get up to speed on this technology. You'll have to do a tutorial for me so I can learn how to do it.
I think I feel the same way about clean language. I would love to learn it, but then when it comes to actually trying to do it, I'm like, I'll step back. So maybe next week we can open up with, since it's your question, I might try to, I had the urge to do some clean language now, but that was earlier before we got to speaking. So I think like I said, we had a great session. So
yeah, I did too. And I feel that we can just build on each session and in a very organic way. So thank you, Doug.
Right. Chunk it down, right?
See you soon.
Goodbye, John.
See you tomorrow.
Right.